Egypt. Well, usually we are keen to bring you more about political issues, culture, literature, charity things, well, a lot of things that we are used to talk about every week. So before we start, let me say hello to my colleague Ahmed. Ahmed, hello.
Hello, Nashwa. Exactly as Nashwa said, yes, we'll be talking about everything in Egypt in the past few weeks. So stay tuned to us. We'll be watching this after this short break. But don't forget to follow us on Nile Cruise, on Nile TV, on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. So stay tuned.
This is a story that was 2 decades in the making. It began with a crisis and became the story of a turnaround, of an economic miracle. This is the incredible story of India. The 1990s. The government relaxes its grip on the economy. For the first time, trade and investment restrictions are gradually lifted. Indian companies can now expand as they please. They're also free to raise funds abroad. Foreign investments are allowed. The nation breathes free, and a new story begins to be scripted.
Welcome back. You're still watching Nile Cruise. In a bid to strengthen bilateral ties, India and Egypt signed 7 key pacts after the Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi held wide-ranging talks in New Delhi, exploring ways to promote ties to the level of strategic partnership. We will be talking now about the relationships, the pacts, and the agreements that were signed between Mohamed Morsi and Manmohan Singh in the past few weeks with Mr. Navdeep Suri, the Ambassador of India to Egypt. Hello, Mr. Ambassador.
Pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Ambassador, let me ask you about the significance of the recent visit of President Morsi to India. How do you see it and how far it is important?
It's a hugely important visit for both countries, I think, because you have a new government in place. It's a democratic government. We are the world's largest democracy. Egypt is an extremely important country, trying to reorient its own foreign policy and create space for itself. I think whenever we've heard about Egypt articulating a Look East policy, we've been looking at how India figures in this. We've been told consistently over the last few months by a number of Egyptian leaders that they look at India as one of the 5 or 6 key countries with which they hope to have a strategic relationship. And so really a visit like this, coming early in the time frame of a new government, is an opportunity for the two countries to really apply themselves, identify future areas of cooperation, create a set of deliverables which become important in the context of a visit like this, and really chart a map for future relations.
But Mr. Ambassador, that was the future of the relationships between Egypt and India. What about the past of the bilateral ties between Egypt and India? How was the shape of the ties between?
Well, you know, it's a bit of a cliche to say that our ties are old and historic,
yes.
But really there's evidence from pharaonic times that some of the muslins in which the mummies were wrapped used to come from India. Right through the Islamic period, when the Egyptian, Cairene and Egyptian civilization was really at the peak, you have any number of accounts of very close trading links between the state of Kerala and the state of Gujarat in India and Egypt, and Cairo being the center for these Indian spices and other things that would come and we change hands in Cairo and then be shipped to the rest of the world. More recent times, if you look at the earlier part of the 20th century, there was great admiration between Mahatma Gandhi and Saad Zaghloul. People remember the fact that when Gandhi was going for the round table conference and he stopped at Port Said, a whole delegation from the Wafd party came to Suez to meet with him. Take it a few years later and see the relationship between Prime Minister Nehru and President Nasser and see how they worked together to build an online movement virtually with the close bonding that they have. And I still meet any number of older Egyptians who have a nostalgia about that period. And I think the challenge for us is to use that base, that platform that we have, and build upon it to really create a relationship that is not just government to government, but really brings the people of the two countries together and creates real benefits in tangible areas.
But what about the cooperation between India and Egypt in the era of former President Mohammed Hosni Mubarak? Why did this relationship stop in his era?
I don't think it's fair to say it stopped. I think the priorities perhaps might have shifted. And our effort really is to restore that traditional warmth that relationship between India and Egypt had.
Yes.
And I'll tell you something, as an Indian diplomat, as an Indian citizen living in Cairo, the kind of warmth that I encounter here, this is my 7th diplomatic assignment. I have never encountered it anywhere else. I think there is some special, subconscious, subliminal bonding between our people, and you have multiple points of reference to it. You know, you can talk about history, you can talk about Gandhi, you can talk about Tagore, you can talk about Nehru and Nasser, you can talk about Amitabh Bachchan.
Gandhi, before we start the program, I was just discussing this with you. But let me ask you about, now you live in Egypt and you experienced a lot here in Egypt. How do you see this period of time? How do you see the revolutionary period, and how do you evaluate things? I'm talking also about India in general.
Right. Speaking at a very personal level, I think that a political transition of this magnitude that Egypt is undergoing at this point of time, it will take a little bit of time for things to find a new equilibrium. You've shaken up a very large country very strongly, and things will take time to settle down. And this is not unusual.
But how did it settle down? I mean, just
well, you know,
talking about the conversation that
absolutely,
took place
but if you look at Spain, it took 7 years after Franco. If you look at Chile, it took 17 years after Allende.
The division we are talking about that we have right now in the streets. For example, we were talking about Gandhi, let's surprise them, then let's bring all people together and start all over again. This is what I'm talking about.
I think, you know, one of the things that is important about democracy is that it's not like an off-on switch, that yesterday we were an authoritarian regime and today we are a democracy. There is the practice of democracy, there's the experience of democracy, and there are the institutions of democracy. And one of the things that democracy does is it forces people to make compromises and to learn to live with each other. And speaking from an Indian example, it's now been 20 years or more since we had any government which had a majority in parliament. So since 1987, every government in India has been a minority government or a coalition government. And what it teaches you is that for the sake of running a country, you have to bring diverse opinions together. We have had a very right-of-center government bringing left-of-center people together so that they could form a majority in parliament. And you see those examples elsewhere in the world. And I think one of the things that Egypt will get over is the current state of polarization and just suspecting the worst of each other. I think it's important to have conversations directly with each other, with due respect to the media. Conversations to the media can exaggerate and they can distort.
Yes.
And so when you start having direct conversations, when you start recognizing each other's point of view, then the bridge is not that big to cross.
Yes. But Mr. Ambassador, regarding the Suez Canal and the Indian investments that could be happening in the Suez Canal in the coming years, what about this? What about the agreements that happened in India between President Morsi and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh regarding the investments there?
No, I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding on that because we had agreements on other subjects, and I'm happy to speak about them.
Yes.
But on the specific issue of Suez Canal, President Morsi spoke to Indian businesses that this is going to be a very important project for Egypt. It's going to be a very important opportunity for major Indian businesses to set up operations in the Suez Canal area, to use its strategic location
But
and
didn't
make it a
mention
base of
specific projects
base of operations. We will be awaiting details of this particular project.
Yes.
We recognize the potential, and one of the things that we guys in government do, or in embassies and diplomats do, is really be the catalysts and facilitators and channels of information. So then it becomes our business to work closely with the government of Egypt, get all the facts, get the real information, and transmit it to the Indian trade and industry people, to apprise them that this is an important opportunity for you.
But what about the memorandum of understanding on cooperation in the field of cybersecurity that was signed between both countries?
That's important because I think as
Could you tell us first more about this?
Yeah, I think both countries have an organization, and this is part of an international framework which deals with cybersecurity, malicious software or hacking or other intrusion attempts into your systems. And we've acquired a fair amount of experience in the last decade or so in dealing with these. And we're more than happy to collaborate with Egypt, because I think the more we share information with each other on the threats that our systems face, the more is the level of confidence that we can build in those systems. So I think as the importance of the internet grows, and as our governmental systems increasingly depend on the net for transfer of information, protecting those informations is almost as vital as protecting your other essential infrastructure. And so collaboration in this is something that I think both countries will gain from.
An IT or an information technology center will be held or will be founded in Al-Azhar University or Al-Azhar in general. What is the significance of choosing such an Islamic institution?
Well, firstly, India is the second largest Muslim country in the world. We have 180 million Muslims, even though we're often not recognized that way.
Yes.
And there's a huge amount of respect in India for Al-Azhar and for the message of moderation and tolerance of other religions and respect for other religions that Azhar has consistently given over the last 1,000 years of its illustrious history. But to be more specific, the idea emerged out of a conversation that I had with the president of Al-Azhar University. When I was new here, I went and called on a number of people, and I called on the president of Al-Azhar University, and we were discussing various ideas of collaboration. And he said he has a great deal of admiration for the accomplishments of India in the field of information technology, and how can India work with Al-Azhar University to upgrade its level of knowledge and skills.
Yes.
And we said we have done a pretty good job in setting up these IT centers in a number of countries, and if you're interested, we'd be more than happy to work with you. So the request came from Al-Azhar, and we responded positively and signed the memorandum of understanding. Now the experts from the two sides will start working together in defining the exact outlines of what kind of course content you want.
Yes.
How many students a year do you want to train? Are you talking about basic programming or